extending our trig ratios. And we already talked about the sine, the cosine, and the tangent ratio. And now we're going to look at their reciprocal ratios. Secant, cosecant, and cotangent. If you have not looked at the vocabulary or the I can statements or the why, pause the video and do so now. All right, so we're already familiar with our SOHCAHTOA. Our sine, cosine, and tangent ratios. Well, the sine and the cosecant are reciprocals of each other. So the cosecant ratio is actually 1 over the sine ratio, or the reciprocal. So it would be hypotenuse over opposite. And cosine and secant are reciprocals of each other. So the secant of an angle is 1 over the cosine of that same angle. And then our tangent and cotangent. So cotangent would be 1 over the tangent of that same angle, or the reciprocal. So we're going to write all 6 trigonometric ratios. So we're going to start out with the ones we're most familiar with: sine, cosine, and tangent. We're going to put the hypotenuse in the denominator of the sine and the cosine. And we'll go side opposite, side adjacent, opposite over adjacent. If we could reduce those ratios, we would. Now we'll get the cosecant, the secant, and the cotangent ratios. And all we do is take the reciprocal. Right, why don't you, we'll do one more together and then you can go ahead and try one. So we have in this measure of this right triangle, P is the right angle, and we are given the sides PON, P, and ON, and it says what represents the secant of angle N. Well, to get that, I would start with writing the cosine ratio of angle N, which would be the side adjacent over the hypotenuse, and then we would take the reciprocal. All right, so why don't you pause the video and go ahead and give this one a try. All right, the next example that we have is we'll use one ratio to find the other ratios. So I'll just kind of sketch them out here. And we'll write down the one that we're given. We're given the tangent ratio is 15 over 8. We can even give ourselves a little picture here. It would be theta. We have opposite over adjacent. So the first one we could probably get is the cotangent ratio, because we would just flip these two, take the reciprocal. But what we need is the hypotenuse to get any of these other ratios. So we know this hypotenuse is going to be the square root of 8 squared plus 15 squared. This actually is 17. This is a Pythagorean triple. 8, 15, 17. So now that we have the hypotenuse, we can write the sine ratio. So we would have 15 over 17. Cosine is 8 over 17. And now we take the reciprocal to get our other two remaining trig ratios. Okay, there's one for you to pause the video and give that a try. All right, and here's a nice little summary of today's lesson.